probably 2005, we had just started, and I got a call from a contractor to come down because he had found bones in a house.
Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Real Estate Investors Club podcast. I'm here today with Brad Chandler, who is a flipper. It sounds like a wholesaler. We're going to get into that. And who's also done some pretty interesting self-discovery work that he's also going to tell us about. So, Brad, the first question we always start out with is, tell me about your journey through life that has led you to be on the show with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Terry. I bought, and well, I guess I probably got it as a gift. When I was in ninth grade, I read a book called How to Buy Real Estate with No Money Down. And I had gone through a tumultuous childhood where parents were divorced and we didn't have much money. So I knew I always wanted to do real estate because there was unlimited money. So in July of 2003, I bought my first house in August of 2003. And that was after, by the way, working 8 long months trying to find my first deal. I had a newborn son. I'd come home, I'd put him to sleep, and then I'd start working from like 8 to midnight. So in July, I bought my first house in 2003. July and August, I bought 6 houses. I came home and told my wife at the time with a new child that I was quitting my full-time job and I was going to flip houses full-time. And she's like, "Are you crazy?" I'm like, "No, it'll be fine." And here we are almost 20 years later and 4,000 houses, and we've been fine.
So, okay, just hang on. 4,000 houses. Like, you're going to have to break that down for me. How does that even happen? That seems like such a huge number to me.
So, I mean, it started with one house, right? So we probably did 100 houses our first year. This year we'll do 300 houses. So over 19 years, it's a lot of houses.
But okay. So, but business model. So like when you say you're flipping, so like you're acquiring a house, is it in your local market? How do you find the house? Do you inject any money into it? Do you do something, or are you just kind of doing arbitrage, like finding distressed properties and then selling them at market value? Like, what's your business model?
So we have 3 different business models, but probably for the first 15 years, we took every single house down and we fixed it up and we resold it. That's all I knew how to do. I didn't know wholesaling existed. I didn't know novations existed. So we did that for 15 years. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've started to wholesale and we started to do novations and we did some buy and hold. So kind of runs the gamut.
And like, how do you find 100 houses?
We spend a fortune in marketing. We spend well over 6 figures a month marketing.
And what does that look like?
TV. So we've spent millions and millions of dollars on TV advertisements. I'm the face of the company and have been. We have a real catchy jingle: Express Homebuyers, we'll buy your house in 7 days. So lots of TV over the years, direct mail, Google AdWords. Now we're doing streaming on the, like Hulu's and Roku's of the world. Facebook ads, just like all the normal stuff. But we're really good at marketing. And we're really good at follow-up. We have a team of now probably 12 full-time virtual assistants in the Philippines. And we have probably 6 acquisition staff. And we are just all over those leads when they come in. And
what's your average price at which you buy those homes?
So of the 4,000 houses, probably 90% of them have been bought, or 95% of them have been bought in DC, Maryland, Virginia. So our average price point here in the market is probably close to 500 now. Our average price point is probably in the 300 range, ARV, like 350, 375.
And you're buying those all like with your own capital, or you're financing them?
All private money. All private money. We use a combination of hard money and then just private net worth, high net worth families and individuals.
Okay. And then how do you like vet a deal? Because like if I'm getting that volume of deal coming in, I'm doing aggressive follow-up. Okay, someone wants to sell their house fast, whatever, they need the money. They come through your, whatever, the web of your VAs, and whatever, you can set the paperwork up. How do you then vet the house?
So, I mean, we have, it's almost like we do an appraisal, right? So we're looking at all the sold comps. And now in this market, if you're looking at the sold comps and that's it, you're silly because you can really get burned. You want to look at the active comps because they'll tell you a much better story, more accurate story than the sold comps will when the market's falling. So we just do a full blown appraisal, looking at the comps, and then we go out to the house and we do an inspection of the house. And, we've done it tens of thousands of times now. So we're pretty good at it. Do we lose money here and there? Of course we do. I mean, we underestimate repairs, or, in this market, we've bought houses where in the last 90 days, the price has gone down 7, 8, 9%. So we have lost some money, but typically we have a pretty good batting average.
And then how do you have time to renovate 100 houses a year?
We don't renovate 100 houses a year because when we did, it really hurt. It was really hard. We had 80 renovations going on at any given time, stretched out across a 4-hour drive, and it was nightmarish. I mean, nightmarish. So, but we did it. I mean, just having different crews. At that time, we had like 3 or 4 project managers and then a head of construction. So just a lot of labor.
Wow. Okay, so I want to, before we get into like kind of the self-development stuff, I want to understand your scaling, because the numbers that I hear, it's a big number. And like I can't imagine, like I have trouble keeping up with like 3 renovations jobs at the same time. Granted, it's like really not my favorite thing. But like how do you, I mean, are you a one-man show? Like how did you scale that even in year 1 to do, 100 jobs like that?
No, so it was my partner and I, and just like any business, we said, okay, let's split the, because we were both doing all the same roles. So it's like, let's split this. You handle construction, you handle the financing part of it, and I'm gonna handle sales and marketing. So I did all the marketing. I was going out signing up houses. I was hiring people and training them. So we just split it, and then as we couldn't do it, we just hired. So, we didn't start out doing 100 houses. We started doing 1 house, and then 2 houses and 3 houses. And then we brought on a junior partner, and then we brought on an admin assistant. And then we brought on I don't even know, it's been so long ago, whatever it was, an acquisition person, and then a disposition person, and then a marketing person. And we just grew as we got more business. And,
Okay.
and scaling, Terry, I mean, this, it's all about people. We've got the greatest team we've had in 19 years. And it's about like just creating good systems. So I've always been pushing, I read the book, The E-Myth,
I
literally
was
like
gonna say,
one of the first books.
I can hear the E-myth like coming out of your mouth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Um, then maybe, so what to close off the business thing, can you take me through like just some numbers, like baby steps through a recent deal that you've done so that people can kind of put, figures on something and see how what you do works?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm fortunate that I only work 3 hours in the business. So I happen to know one deal off the top of my head. And then before the call, I'm like, hey, to my acquisition manager, you guys send me another deal because I know Terry's going to ask me. So I actually know about this deal because about 6 months ago, an employee moved to LA outside of Hollywood. And the plan was for him to work virtually and just close things in the DC market. And I'm like, if he's there and he's really good, why don't we spend some marketing dollars? So we spent some marketing dollars. We got a house under contract that we ended up buying in Carson, California, which is a suburb of LA, for 550. It had a pool. The lady had inherited it from her brother. She lived in Vegas. He had died on the stairs, and he was there for so long that the hazmat crew had to come in and like remove him and remove the stairs. So when we went to look at the house, we couldn't give him a firm offer because we couldn't get to the second floor. So we had to have a handyman come in, build some stairs. So we bought it for 550. We ended up putting in like $65,000. We listed it for 799, and it ended up selling for 780. So we're probably going to make around 100 or 110 on that one. That was a good one, but that's one that I know that we just closed today. Actually, we just resold it today.
Good for you. And so that, what would your financing look like? That was private money, all private money?
That was interesting. That was a hodgepodge. So I think my company funded $300,000 out of cash, and then I had a home equity line on my house here in Virginia. So I'm like, it's just sitting here. So I lent it to the company. It was like $270,000, and then I think we funded the renovation. So yeah, I'll be getting a check back for whatever with interest, close to $300,000 here soon, just to pay off my home equity loan, put some money in my pocket.
Good for you.
Thank you.
And let me think if I can think of another question. So that was the financing, the numbers. What was the turnaround time?
So I think we bought that house 3 months ago, and I'm in a mastermind, and we happen to there is a high-powered real estate wife and the husband that I'm friends with. He does construction. He does new builds. So it was just nice. I called him up. His name is Coco. I'm like, hey, dude, will you renovate this house? And he did. And he did a great job.
Great. Sounds like super streamlined. And my next question was going to be like, tell me a weird story, because I think the rest of the interview is kind of about stuff that we don't talk about so much. So I think like us real estate people, like we like to talk about deals, we like to talk about money, but we all have these like kind of weird experiences. And I think, the fact that somebody died in the house was a weird experience. Maybe you want to use that answer, or maybe you have another one. But I know
Mhm.
that like sometimes those are the best stories of like, some strange purchase or some strange owner or a deal that maybe you didn't do because it was too weird. You got any other stories?
Oh my god. I mean, we could be here all day, right? But I'll give you a great one. Probably 2005, we had just started, and I got a call from a contractor to come down because he had found bones in the house. And as he's ripping up the floorboards, there is a cutout in the floor, and he opened it up and looked down, and there's bones. So what do I do as a great marketer? I go and get like 10 We Buy Houses signs out of my trunk. I put them all over the house outside. And then my partner's wife is a PR. She was in PR. So she called all the local news outlets. So all the new local news outlets come down, and I'm literally like saying in front of the house that the We Buy Houses signs are in the back. I'm a marketer, of course. And I'm like, I hope some family can finally get closure. To me, it looked exactly like a knee bone. It looked like a femur. It looked like leg bones. So I thought someone killed them. They obviously cut the floor open. So DC is DC. If you don't know DC, for the United States, it's one of the more corrupt cities in the world, probably. And they don't like to work really hard in DC. So months went by, weeks went by, and I was like, what happened to the bones? And they're like, we took them to the Smithsonian, and they were animal bones. And I'm like, animal bones? I've never seen animal bones that look like that. And let me ask you a question. Why is someone going to cut their floor open to put animal bones down there? So that was the story I got. And I'm sitting there saying, anyway, who knows what they were, but that was a crazy story.
So you never found out what the bones were.
I mean, they said that the Smithsonian said they identified them as animal bones. Now, was that what they just told me just to not have to do any work? I don't know.
That is one great weird story. What was it like unloading the house after you like created all this buzz about like dead people in the house?
It wasn't bad at all. We had another tragic story where a lady killed her kids in the house, and we didn't know till after we bought the house, and we were still able to sell that house. So,
And like, was that an issue? Like, did the people who were buying it kind of balk at it?
you know what? I mean, this was literally probably 2004. I don't remember, honestly. I just was shocked that we were able to sell it. No, I think we had to disclose it, and I think
Yeah.
they were okay with it.
Wow, that's crazy. Because like for sure, like us in Canada, like violent death is like one of the things that you have to disclose. And
Yep.
yeah, anyways, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that story. That's like one of my
Sure.
favorite part of the interview.
I mean,
Um,
Terry, I've done a lot of houses. I mean, we've walked into houses where there's women like there was a woman literally scooping her poop out of the toilet in a bucket because for months she had been pooping in the tub.
yeah, no, actually I have one of those myself at the moment.
Mm.
So yeah.
Have you really been listening to the episode, or has your monkey mind been taking you off in one direction or another? Our mental habits can be our biggest assets or our biggest liabilities as we pursue certain goals. For me, the biggest performance gains have always come from training my mind. In my book, Mindful Landlord, I talk about how you can train your mind and how you can apply some of these strategies to your journey in the real estate field. The book is available on Amazon and also on its website, mindfullandlord.com. Now I'll stop evangelizing for the power of mental training and let you get back to the show.
All right, so let's like flip tax a little bit, but also to something that we don't talk about too much in the real estate field. I want to hear about the lifestyle hits that you took to get where you are. Because I think like, especially when you're living like, the Instagram lifestyle, we have a tendency to like only post and talk about our successes and the things that went well. But
Yeah.
for anybody who wants to like really succeed in real estate, you're going to take a lifestyle hit. And if that's delaying gratification, lowering expenses, making time sacrifices, what did that look like for you?
So, I mean, this is a really great question. It leads perfectly into what we're going to talk about the second half of this interview. And that is, so what did I sacrifice? What has happened to me in those 19 years? I've had 2 failed marriages. I have 2 kids with behavioral problems, not massive, but just, like most kids struggle with anxiety, struggle with, using weed when they shouldn't. I made 5 business mistakes that cost me $9 million. I used weed and alcohol as a way to feel more comfortable in social situations. But did that have anything to do with the business? Yes and no. it had to do with the business because the business was my vehicle to try to make it. When I look back on why I started Express Home Buyers, it was to make a bunch of money. Why did I want to make a bunch of money? Because I didn't feel worthy inside, and the money was a way that I thought could prove my worth. So it was the business who drove all this stuff, but you can't blame any of this on the business, because if now that I know what I know after going through this major life transformation in the last 20 months, is that most of us have some component of not feeling good enough, not feeling like we belong, or feeling like we can never get out of life what we want. And those three things are all formed from childhood stress or traumas. And they're formed as coping mechanisms. So when something bad happens as a 6-year-old, something bad happens to you, you say, I'm bad. That helps you get through the situation. And it helps you then. But when you're 47 years old and your subconscious mind is telling you you're bad, you need to do something to prove yourself. You do it through drugs and women and buying yachts and trying to make a shitload of money. But guess what? None of that stuff will ever bring you inner peace. You have everything you've ever needed to be happy right inside you now. And when you can make that shift, like I did, the whole world changes. Now I run a business and I started a coaching company. It was the first business that I've started in my life where I'm not looking at how much money I can make. I'm looking at how many people's lives can I impact that are struggling with obesity, shitty marriage, shitty relationships. They drink too much, they eat too much, they have anxiety, they're stressed all the time, they judge themselves, they're in the state of like irritability all the time. How many of those people can I teach that the only reason you're like that is because of these silly thoughts that you have in your head that aren't true? And when I can help you see those by going back to your childhood and processing these, the whole world changes. So now, Express Home Buyers and a Brad Chandler coaching, it's all about the impact. And is there any coincidence that this year is going to probably be one of our best years, if not our best ever? And I'm not focused on money. I'm focused on making an impact.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I'm gonna, what coaching program did you do to come to that realization? Because I'm gonna see if you're channeling the coaching that I think you're channeling.
So I went through a friend of a friend. He's an ex-Navy SEAL, him and his wife out in Park City. So I learned from him, and then I studied under one of the best hypnotist therapists in the world named Marissa Peer. And I also studied under he's a 40-year physician who specializes in trauma and addiction, Dr. Gabor Mate. So I've gone out over these last 20 months and spent thousands of hours. I've read 40 books. I've studied under some of the best, and I've created this this system where literally in a matter of hours, not months, not years, not weeks, in a matter of hours, I've had profound change with people with OCD, chronic depression, alcoholism, just by going back to the untruths that they told themselves from childhood and using neuroplasticity, which is just rewiring your brain through constant talk and feedback. These people have completely changed their lives in such a beautiful way.
It's amazing. But let me just get back a little bit to we're talking about the lifestyle hits, right? Because like I asked you that question and then you kind of segued into the coaching, and like I want to give you a bit more time to talk about that experience. But when we're talking about the lifestyle hits, like, so you kind of, listed a bunch of stuff of your kids, some, drug and alcohol crutches, let's say, some
Yep.
failed marriages. Like, is that because of the fact that you felt like you needed to succeed in real estate, and so you didn't give those things the appropriate amount of attention? Or like, are those two independent variables?
They're completely independent, and people would think that was the case. But now that I've learned the truth is I had no chance of having a successful relationship or successful marriage because of the way that I felt about myself internally. And that's why we have a 50 to 72% divorce rate from the first divorce rate to the third marriages. It's because you can't have a successful relationship. If you've got a shitty marriage and you're listening to this right now, it has nothing to do with the relationship between the two of you. It has to do with the relationship you have with yourself.
Wow. I feel like that needs to be like the teaser for this episode.
Yeah, because listen, I went to, how many marriage counseling sessions I went to, Terry, in my 2 marriages? And I walked out of there like, we should just get a divorce, because they're talking about like, oh, you need to go on more date nights and you need to hold her hand. And oh, when she says something to you, repeat back what she said. No, all of that is bullshit. If you're fighting for your worth, you're going to always find someone else fighting for their worth, because an unwhole person is not going to go meet an enlightened person. It never happens. What we do is we go find another unwhole person, and then we have unwhole offspring. And then we just repeat this over and over and over. It's called the multi-generational curse. So yeah, none of that stuff works in marriage counseling, because I've been literally some of the best in the world, marriage counselors. It doesn't work. It's always about the relationship you have with yourself.
So tell me more about what does work. You have this coaching program. You've kind of hinted at, neuroplasticity and like going back and reworking some childhood things. Can you give me like maybe a concrete example or a takeaway that like when people listen to this episode, they can go away from there and be like, I'm going to implement this now and it's going to make a difference?
Yeah, I think you have to start looking at when you have internal upset. It's always an opportunity to grow and to level up, right? When you're arguing with your spouse or your partner, it's never about the actual issue at hand. It's always it goes back your brain. It's doing its job. It's a survival thing. It's your subconscious brain. It goes back to the worst point in your childhood where someone did something that your spouse did to make you feel a certain way. So they leave up the toilet seat. The toilet seat is not about the argument. You somehow feel unloved, unworthy because someone did something to you that made you feel that way. So you wrap that story in about, well, he left the toilet seat up because he doesn't care about me. You don't do it consciously, it's all unconscious. So you can start there. That's like a one thing is you stop, you don't lash out at the person. You literally stop and you identify the emotion, whatever it is. Then you label it by saying I'm feeling, not I am, because when you say I am, that's identifying you as something. Identities don't change, feelings come and go. So I am feeling upset, I'm feeling sad. Then give yourself compassion for that, because most of us didn't have a chance as a child to get compassion for emotions. Most of our parents couldn't handle our emotions. So it's just like you can't cry. If you get if you I've had clients that if they cry, their parents would hit them more. So they're like, I didn't ever cry. I mean, just crazy stuff, right? So that's something you can do. Ultimately, though, whether you have physical pain or mental pain, it's your body's alarm system saying that something is wrong in your body and your mind. How do you fix it? You always have to go back to the source of the pain. So you have a back pain. The doctor goes in and they fuse the two vertebrae together, but they don't look what caused it. 6 months later, you're back on the operating room table. It's the same thing with mental pain. What is causing the anxiety, the depression? What's causing you to come home and drink 3 glasses of wine or eat 10 donuts? Because you weren't born that way. You were born this perfect child. You weren't born with anxiety. You weren't born with depression. So let's go back to where it started and turn those stories around.
And that's something you do through hypnosis, or it's like more sort of a conscious analysis?
I've done it both. I got into hypnosis because I want to be the best literally transformation coach in the world, and I'm willing to do anything. So I look at everything and say, is this a tool that could help my clients? What hypnosis does, it's not what you think. It's not you're not. I'm not going to have you on stage running, chasing a mouse around. That's all like entertainment. What hypnosis does is it allows you to access your subconscious mind. When you go to traditional talk therapy and you go every Tuesday at 11 a.m. and you talk about how you get mad when the toilet seat's up and you drink too much and you yell, they focus on the symptoms at hand. They don't go back to the source. They don't go back to it's all on a conscious level. You don't make your decisions. You don't get upset and cry when your husband leaves the toilet seat up because of your conscious mind. It's all unconscious. So what hypnosis does is your mind, your subconscious mind knows exactly the source of why you're overweight, why you drink too much, why your marriage is shitty. So we tap into the subconscious mind and we ask it in the state of hypnosis, what is causing this? What are the scenes that have caused this? And it'll literally go back to 3 scenes. And I've had countless clients be like, I didn't even remember that. Like, that's crazy. This is amazing. We go back and we figure out where they start. And now we have an awareness as an adult that, oh, this is why I'm feeling that way. I don't need to feel that way anymore. It was just this crazy untruth that I formed as a coping mechanism as a child. My brain was doing exactly what it should have done.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredibly powerful. Like everything you're saying, I'm like, he's right. Oh man, it's true.
And why don't we hear this, Terry? Because do you know what? 99% of the world's problems, from our prisons being full to Putin invading Ukraine, on and on and on, child molestation, drunk driving, addiction, health conditions. It all comes back to this lack of self-love and self-compassion because of these stories. But you don't ever hear anything. That's why I'm so passionate. And that's why I spend all of my time doing this, because I'm like, people, you have to know this. I came from this place. I'm here and my world is so different. Every day is like a blessing. Everything. It's just amazing. I don't get the times I get angry or frustrated anymore, like hardly any, because I see everything in a different light now.
Yeah, no, it sounds it sounds like almost a bit like kind of Buddhist enlightenment, that when you see like the stories behind the stories, or like the fact that we're overlaying narratives on top of reality, And as a result of that, we just have the possibility to rewrite things if we want to. But you have to find where the levers are, because it sounds really easy, but like it's actually not.
Um, if you have the right person, it really isn't. I mean, literally in a 2 hour session, I would figure it out 99.9% of the time. So if you have the right person, it should not be hard at all.
Wow, that's very encouraging.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're listening to this and you're suffering with any of the stuff I mentioned, no matter what you've tried, don't ever say to yourself, "I've tried it all. This is my life. I'm gonna stay in this shitty marriage. I'm gonna stay 60 pounds overweight. I'm gonna keep drinking a 12-pack when I get home at night because that's my life. It's shitty. I can't do anything about it." I'm here to tell you that's absolute bullshit. You can change. You don't have to have years. You don't have to have months. You don't even have to have, in a matter of a 5-week program, like I can radically change your life. So if you're suffering and you're like, I've tried everything, you haven't tried everything, because there is hope for you. So just have hope that you can get out of life what you deserve out of life.
Great. That's just very powerful. You kind of answered my last interview question, which is what should we be talking about that we don't talk about? And I think that's it. Like that's what we should be talking about that we're not talking about.
Yeah, I mean, do you know the rate of childhood suicide, or suicide in general, but the rate of childhood, like kids on Ritalin and all this ADD and ADHD, none of those kids were born with that. So my parting thing that we should be talking about, when your kid has behavioral problems, do you know the first place you should look? Go to the bathroom and look right in the mirror, because you are likely a cause of your child's problems. And I know that's really hard to hear, but it's the truth. Your children, the reason for their behavioral problems are your problems. If you want to help your child, get help for yourself. And that's what I'm doing. And now my children are starting to change, because I can say to them, listen, I did all these things I shouldn't have done. I didn't know. Now I have an awareness. This is why I behave the way I behave. This is why you behave the way you behave. You don't have to do it anymore. And it's a process with them. But it always starts with the parents. If you think your kid has behavioral problems and you can go get it fixed without fixing yourself, it might be fixed for 2 weeks when they're in some program or whatever. Wait till they come home and you introduce them to the environment that created it all. They're going to go right back to the way they were.
Yeah, it's really rings very true, and I think you're absolutely right. It's actually like nothing to do with this. I was like reading some research on that, and it turns out that like parents with mental illness or poverty or like these other kinds of things are statistically way higher in likelihood to have kids who have behavioral problems, and like so that link is really right there.
But let me explain that link, because it's something that drives me crazy that people say about alcoholism too. Well, alcoholism runs in the family. No, it doesn't. The trauma from alcoholism runs in the family. You don't pass down mental illnesses. You pass down the traumas from the mental illnesses. So that's why parents have to talk about something that we need to start talking about. Our generation from like 15 to 20 years old is the most broken 5-year in the history of the world, I think. Why is that? Well, partly because of social media, partly because of COVID, but it has a lot to do with the parents and their behavior.
Yeah.
And it's not their fault either, right? It's their parents and their parents and their parents, but it's got to start somewhere. If you have a child, the greatest gift that you can give your child is to teach them how to break the multi-generational curse. And how do you do that? You break it yourself. You break it by understanding that you are enough and that you have self-love and self-compassion, so you can teach your child how to have self-love and self-compassion, so they don't have to use drugs, alcohol, coping, food, whatever it is, and then go marry an unwhole person and just start the whole process over.
Yeah. Brad, this has been a really great interview. It's fascinating. What's the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to learn more?
bradchandler.com. And listen, if you don't have to work with me, but I want to help you. So I offer a free 30-minute phone call. If you're struggling, if you're suffering and you don't know where to turn, call me. I will help you as best I can. But just know you don't have to suffer one day longer.
Thank you, Brad, for being on the show. It's been very informative. I hope our audience gets a lot of value out of this.
Thank you so much.